So in this episode of Book of the Beast, we're going to be going over Defkoptas. And Defkoptas have not changed a whole lot. They go down slightly in price, so they're only 30 points per model. And the weapon option swap outs are both free, so you can have your choice of twin-link big shooters, twin-link rocket launchers, or a custom Mega Blaster, all for the same price, which is kind of nice. They have, of course, gained Here We Go, which again is nice, because that way they get the re-rolling the one assault die. One of the two assault dice, and they still have their hit and run, which is still an initiative test, so it's still, you know, very iffy if that's ever going to go off. And they have scout. One thing that I did notice when looking it up is the scout rule has changed. It says very specifically that if you scout, you cannot charge on the first game turn, not the first turn, very specifically the first game turn. So if you scout, no matter what, you cannot assault first turn one. It still has the same price for the Buzzsaw, or otherwise known as a Power Fist, for 25 points, and the Bomb for 15 points, which is nice because that's also used in the movement phase. And it's really kind of weird to have it on a jet bike because the bombing run rules are kind of very specific to flyers and flying monstrous creatures. So it does say you cannot shoot, or it counts as one of your weapons that you shoot in the movement phase, even though you could technically shoot at another unit. So if you drop a bomb with the Defkopter, you cannot shoot in the shooting phase. It can go up to 5 models per unit, which I probably wouldn't take 5, simply because of leadership tests. Because if you take 5 and you're down to just one model, you're below 25%. So you will, if you fail your leadership test, you're going to have to rally on double ones. But if you stick to 4 models in the unit, then you'll always rally on your full leadership because you'll never be below 25%. So if you want to go take a large unit of these, I wouldn't go over. I would stick to 4 or less instead of going to 5. So because of the limitations on Scout, I probably wouldn't scout them anymore, but I would definitely use them to outflank, which is another benefit of the Scout rule. Because when they outflank, again, it's going to be just like the buggies. They're going to come in and get those side armor shots and take objectives on the sides and stuff like that. So if you're running some outflanking Defkopters, you really want to try and make sure you set up objectives within 12 inches of the table edges so you can get your Defkopters to score those objectives. And doing something like taking the comms relay with the Aegis defense line to get your reserves in, or to re-roll your reserve roll so you can hopefully get them in definitely turn 2 or later if you want them to. Is a good idea. Same with the if you want to try and outflank commandos. So again, this is going to be a pretty short video. There's not a lot to say about Defkopters. I really do like Defkopters. I've always kind of liked them. They're a great outflanking unit. They're only 5 points more than the war buggies, and they have the additional advantage of being able to assault. The downside, of course, is that they can fall off the table. Fail a leadership test and fall back. And the mob rule is not going to really help them because you can't give them a character, and they're never going to be over 10 models. So they're not going to really gain much from having mob rule. So the big debate is if you want to take Defkopters to outflank or do you want to take war buggies to outflank. And there's pros and cons to both of them. With the Defkopters, they have the ability to assault, tie stuff up, assault vehicles. With the war buggies, they have the advantage of they're never going to run off the table from taking casualties. So there's a plus and minus to each one. You really kind of have to decide what you go. I think the war buggies at, let's see, yeah, so the twin-link rocket launch is the same price. So the war buggies, I think, are going to be a slightly superior outflanking unit simply because they're always going to be there, and they're not going to run away from losing a model or two, and they're just slightly cheaper. But again, it's going to be really hard to make the choice, I think, between these and the buggies, simply because of the ability for these guys to assault. Normally they don't do very well in assault because they are just orcs, and 30 orcs is a good assault unit. 5 orcs, not so much, or 4 orcs. Even with the power fist, they're still only So even though they can assault, they're not that great at it, simply because there's not going to be enough models in there. Of course, they do have they still have the 4-up armor save. They only have a Choppa, so they don't gain the extra attack from having 2 close combat weapons. which is another downside, unfortunately. So they're only going to have 2 attacks, 3 on the charge. But here we go is nice. And so you got to make the choice if you're going to run an outflanking unit between the Defkopters and the war buggies. I still, as I said, I think the slight advantage goes to the war buggies. They're slightly cheaper, and they won't run off the table. And since these guys are not that great in assault, you're not really losing that much. I mean, maybe like a unit of cultists or a small unit of guardsmen, or maybe in Fire Wars, some small unit. Well, not Fire Wars because they're going to shoot the crap out of you on Overwatch, but a small units that are objective takers, these would be okay against. But anything that's like in a real backfield unit, like a unit of Long Fangs or Devastators, anything like that is not going to be that great for these guys to assault. So just keep in mind, my vote, if you're going to outflank something, go with the war buggies over the Defkopters, for the simple reason that they're always going to be on the table. So that's it for this episode of Book of the Beast. I'll talk to you guys later.